Hi, this is Levi. Before we get into this episode, I wanted to take a quick minute to introduce a few of the other podcasts in the WCF Podcast Network. Tom and Naomi are exploring how we interact in our ecclesial relationships in From the Platform. It's a very in-depth series that is incredibly helpful for understanding and developing compassion and better listening practices. That's From the Platform. Sam Taylor from Cleveland, Ohio, produces weekly devotionals in Pause to Consider. Think Mr. Rogers meets Fireside Chat. I love Sam's humble style and think every episode is fantastic. You can find both of those wherever you get your podcasts or on our website at wcfoundation.org. Now, here's the show.
Welcome back to Little Faith. This is a podcast sponsored by the Williamsburg Christadelphian Foundation. A Little Faith podcast explores both the challenges and hope of living a life of faith. This is another of our special podcasts covering faith during COVID-19. I'm Helen, and today I'm chatting with Simeon Spry. Hi, Simeon. How are you?
I'm wonderful, Helen. Thanks so much for letting me be a part of this.
It's really nice to meet someone new. I haven't lived here like that long in North America, so I'm always looking forward to meeting new people. So how's life been for you over the last month or so?
Well, it's been a bit of a roller coaster ride for sure. We were living a normal life, and we had actually just come back from a beautiful vacation, me and my wife, from Mexico, and that was a completely different world. That was about a month and a half ago, and we came back, and then suddenly, the news started to ramp up, and the whole world turned upside down. And now, just thinking back to where we were and what we were doing a month and a half ago, and how our life is now, it's night and day different.
Yeah. And you've got quite a unique perspective for us because you own a grocery store.
That's right, yes. And it's certainly, it's been a little getting used to being called a essential service, a hero. It's not typically the way that grocery stores have been seen in the past. I think quite often, we've typically hired, students, retirees, minimum wage workers, and I think kind of forgotten about as sort of a lower grade employment. And so it's certainly been interesting as we see the transition to now being referred to as heroes and essential frontline workers, and it's certainly been a completely different experience.
Yeah. So take us back to when you first heard about coronavirus and what you needed to do in your store and what happened.
Yeah, it was so of course we had been hearing about it for some time, and we knew what was happening over Wuhan, and my sister works and studied public health, and she was obviously giving us a little bit of background. This is a bigger deal than we thought. I don't think anyone really understood how big and how different it was. But we had heard about it before. But truth be told, in the store, there wasn't a lot of talk. There wasn't a lot of communication. The first sign, really, that I realized it was starting to come over here was when soaps and sanitizers and we're just selling at a greater rate than we were used to. But nothing too crazy at first. And then it was Thursday, and that's when it was the big announcement made in our region in Ontario, where they officially closed schools and canceled the hockey season, which was a real big deal to us Canadians. And once that announcement had been made by our premier, it completely changed everything. It was actually a Thursday, typically my day off, and I just kind of went into the afternoon to check on my store, and one of my managers called me and said, "You won't believe it. It is pandemonium in here." And I went in there, and I had never seen anything like it. You could take the busiest day of the year, great, the day right before Christmas or Thanksgiving, and double it. The amount of people that were everywhere and just buying everything, filling carts to the brim. And of course, the joke that everyone is, the toilet paper, completely empty, the first thing to go.
Yeah.
So it was a subtle, starting to see a few things. We had been selling a lot more of, basic necessities. But really, it was all kind of in one big announcement. And in one afternoon, it seemed almost everybody in the entire surrounding town and region came out and shopped everything they could. And at first we thought, okay, wow, that was something. Those people were scared, they stocked up. And it can't continue much more. So we did our best to restock our shelves and prepare. And then Friday came was even more, and Saturday and Sunday it just continued on. And really, even up to this point, we haven't really seen a let off in it. There's different styles of shopping. It's a little bit less panicked, but that increased volume, I would still say, on the verge of hoarding, of filling your buggies right to the brim every time is still going on even right now.
And have you had to change your store opening hours to give you time to restock shelves and to give time for people who are vulnerable to come and shop separately?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, there was so the first weekend it was really just catching our breath and saying, wow, what is happening? And a panic among the whole entire industry, really, in trying to get product out on shelves. And a lot of these products have a decent amount of backstock that is kept in the warehouses and the factories. So it wasn't so much any shortages, but it was trying to get the product out to us first. And as soon as that kind of settled down, then we realized, okay, well, now we're in a different reality. This isn't a one weekend thing. We've got to start looking at different policies and procedures to keep our staff safe during their time, and of course try to keep our customers safe. So the actual journey of coming to where or how we operate the store now was over a couple weeks, as there was a lot of information that was put out there and changed. Initially, we were told that gloves and face masks were not the route to take, to not buy those up, to not use them, to not have our staff, and it was actually forbidden to have our staff use masks at first. The direction from public health here in Canada was to save those for the frontline workers, and just try to practice hygiene and hand washing. And then bit by bit, it slowly evolved to, getting all of the different personal protective equipment we could get for our staff, installing barriers. As you mentioned, we limit the amount of customers that we have in the store. We've herd them around like cattle almost, with one directional shopping, making them follow all in the same direction to avoid passing by. We force them to wash and sanitize their hands right when they come in the store. We clean and sanitize the buggies. I've got staff that are full-time workers now going up and down the aisles and cleaning and sanitizing. As you mentioned, another important aspect that we tried to come up with originally was how to separate those most vulnerable and give them an opportunity. So at my store, we started doing a curbside pickup where people could prepay for their groceries, pick them up outside. And we started doing a home delivery service, which bring it right to their house for them. And as you mentioned, there's a dedicated time where we try to do the first hour of every day to leave it for those with immune deficiency issues or the elderly, so that they can have a time right after the store has first been cleaned, right after we're open, and they have a time to shop and hopefully not be much at risk with the crowds and groups.
So have you been working overtime, or have you had to take on extra staff or other people? Have they had to up their hours to meet this demand?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Like nothing ever. I almost stretched them to the breaking point in the first weekend, my poor staff, because as I mentioned, there's only about 30 of us on staff at the time. We typically would run 10 to 12 employees in a day. And when you have all these extra duties, all these extra jobs, suddenly we needed to be upwards of close to 20 staff members on the busy day to be looking after all of the different jobs there. So we certainly involved a lot of extra overtime, a lot of extra working. Haven't had much time away from the store at all since it started, because it's a lot of very kind of sensitive situations, making those different decisions, dealing with the different customers, different people that don't want to be on board, that don't want to be told to sanitize, that don't want to be told which direction to shop. So having myself be there to kind of keep the peace even sometimes has been a full-time job in itself. Yeah, we've hired seasonal contract workers. We've had teams of volunteers in the community that have offered to come in and help out delivering groceries, picking orders, and so we've nearly doubled the amount of people that we have in the store on a given day, and looking for more every day. Yeah.
So tell me, how have your staff been feeling? Like, obviously, it's a lot for them, and it's a big change.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I always realize that every single person is a little bit different, and every staff member has seemed to take to this a little bit differently. There's some that were, part-timers looking for more hours that have jumped at the opportunity and taken everything they can. There's quite a few staff members that didn't feel comfortable continuing to work. I had a few that were elderly, retired. I had a few that had immune deficiencies where they were a little more vulnerable. So I did lose quite a few staff members to begin with. And I've had, the ones that are there, there's a little bit of a mix. There's a little bit of frustration for sure with the fact of what you're dealing with and the stress of it. And knowing that every day we're there, we're putting our families at home at risk when we come home, and understanding the necessity of doing what we do. But as I said, it's a very different feeling for these grocery store workers that have typically been kind of, I don't want to say looked down upon, but certainly not held up on a high pedestal as important, essential people, and now suddenly being told that they're so important and they are required to keep our society working. So my job is really to try to keep them motivated and keep them engaged and put in whatever rules and policies that I can to keep them safe. And of course, for those that have not felt safe, then I don't force anyone to stay and look to try to replace them. But I found more often than not, the staff have all stepped up. They've done what needed to be done. They kind of grabbed the bull by the horns and tackled this. And we've in our company also increased our compensation quite substantially by about 60% for all of them. So I think that helps to ease the sting for a few of them as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Money talks.
So you feel that people are really strengthened and they kind of come together to work harder to keep the effort up. Absolutely. In our small town, for sure. And it's gone both ways. In our town, people have really come together. I've talked to some of my colleagues, owners in other areas and cities where they've felt the other way, where people have almost kind of gone for a every man for themselves mentality and become a little bit more aggressive and selfish and greedy. But so far in my experience, don't get me wrong, there's been a few of them, but for the most part, I really do feel that as a community, we've pulled together and really looking out for each other. And obviously there's been a lot of job loss and a lot of financial stress. So our community has put together a special community action fund to make sure that all the families in the village are being fed, are being looked after, that anyone who's needing help is able to get it. So I've certainly been humbled and impressed by some of the spirit of the people around us and how they've come through. Yeah, me too. I think it's really heartwarming to kind of see that love and care for each other. And it's very Christ-like, isn't it? It's what we
absolutely
what we hope that we should all do on a daily basis anyway. But this crisis has definitely highlighted that even more. And so, do you feel like you've seen a change in behaviour in customers and the way that they treat staff in your store?
Oh, absolutely. And you've seen twofold. You do see tension. You see fear. You really do see fear in their eyes as they come in, especially some of the ones that have really taken it seriously and been shut-ins and are only coming out as they're supposed to just go to do a quick shop, and you see the fear in their eyes and you see their pain and how quickly they want to get in and out and their frustration with new rules and regulations in the store that they're not used to. The process of one-way shopping actually makes your shopping significantly longer. So in some ways people are frustrated with having to be in the store longer than they want to be. But I certainly do see we are thanked almost every single day, if not multiple times a day. I hear somebody come up and say, thank you so much for what you guys are doing. Thank you for what your staff is doing. We have people bringing us baked goods. We've had people that have offered to buy and bought the whole entire staff meals from local takeout restaurants and offered any endless amounts of different help, whether it be financial or even just words of encouragement. And people always putting signs out in front of the store thanking us. And it's really been something beautiful to myself as Mental World. And I know to my staff, it certainly helps you to keep going on some of those tougher days, being treated and spoken to as kindly as we have.
That's really heartwarming to hear. Yeah, and I've been out a couple of times and I've experienced the same. And I've also, like some of the small, I went to a small grocery store the other day and they were just really thankful that I had even come in.
Yes.
because they had seen business drop and the amount of people kind of coming in. They couldn't keep up with their like telephone orders. They were doing some deliveries, but yeah, incredibly thankful. And I feel like even though there have been some frustrations at the, as you say, the slowness of getting around the store and finding things, and at the same time, I felt that there was just a deeper sense of respect for each other between customers and the people who worked in the grocery store, and that really, that's what there should be all the time. Yeah, I'd love to kind of explore a little bit more with you about how, we as a Western society treat people, and how we can treat people differently depending on what job they do, and people can feel valued in different ways depending on what jobs they do, and really that's very unbalanced and unfair.
Yes, you're absolutely right. It's something I think, and I don't know if it's just, my experience has all been in Western culture, and I don't know if it's limited to us, but it really is something. We define ourselves, who we are as a person, so much by our job. Who are you? I'm a doctor, I'm a lawyer, I'm a teacher, instead of I'm a Christian, I'm a friend, I'm a father, and we all know that we wear many different hats in our lives, but quite often what really sets us is our job, our value. You hear, I'm a lawyer, oh wow, or if you hear, I'm a grocery clerk, oh okay, and I know absolutely myself, before I was blessed enough to have the opportunity to be able to buy my own store, I was the same way. I was a guy working in, and I'd come out of university and had worked in a grocery store. And a lot of people, what are you doing with your life? And I know even my parents loved them and blessed them. My dad called, when are you going to get a real job? And, when are you going to look after your family and all that? And there really is a different perception of value of what you are as a person based on what you do. And I think that completely misses the point, because we've seen right now very much firsthand, of course, the doctors and the nurses and all those frontline workers are the absolute essential and always have been. But when we look right now, the garbage men, the grocery store workers, even the mechanics and those jobs that may not have been your top dream jobs, we rely on those people very heavily. We need those people. I think we could all be fine, to get by for at least quite some time without ever having a lawyer. Yet, those frontline essential workers, the ones we really need, are the ones that we can, very easily turn our nose up at when we don't realize how important that job is that they do.
Totally. Yeah, I completely agree with you. And of course, as Christians, we have a faith, a great faith, and we know that God loves us all equally, and that he values us equally, and so therefore we should be valuing everyone in the same way, regardless of what they do, where they come from.
Yes, you're absolutely right. And there's a bit of an irony as well in how it works, that typically those jobs that we as a society and we as Christians will fall into the same traps as valuing, honestly, they could be quite often what takes us away from our faith, what takes us away from doing what we need. If I could share personally, when I was working in a grocery store as a manager, and maybe it wasn't the most, proudest job ever, but at the same time, I made a living. I was able to survive. Me and my wife and children, we never needed for anything. And I worked, my 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. And I came home, and at the end of 40 hours, I had a good week's work, and I had vacation, and I had, benefits, and I was quite content. And I was quite happy. Obviously, I always had to strive and drive to do more. And I had done that job with the goal of eventually being able to own my own store. And then here it is, owning your own store, owning your own business. Well, now it's no longer, work 8 hours and come home. Now you're talking, sometimes from the moment you wake up to the moment you go to bed, you're dealing with the business or you're at the business. It's evenings, it's weekends, it's Sundays. I've had calls on Sunday mornings. I've had, I've been unable to get the children out to CYC and Bible classes. I've been at the store too late. I've had all weekends. I've missed birthdays. And it's kind of funny that, when you have a job that maybe now is, might be looked at as more, financially more stable, more better. And it honestly has created a complete new challenge in my life, a complete new challenge of having that time. And I know the same thing for a lot of those different brothers or sisters that, that are business executives or lawyers, or as they work your way up there, as you get to those jobs that we define as being more valuable, it actually takes so much of our life, it takes so much of our time, and it's taken away from, exactly as you pointed out, the one thing we're supposed to actually value, which is our relationship with God, which is our relationship with our family and each other. And it's a strive for success, a strive for money that we're all playing and that we're all a part of. And I think sometimes we even as Christians get caught up and forget that, having that successful job or having that, bigger paycheck isn't going to make your life any better. It's not going to make your life any easier. In fact, it'll most likely make your life more difficult and more tiring and more stressful at times. And that's certainly been the big wake up for me in the last year after starting to own this business is, yes, in some way life gets a little easier and maybe some financial issues are a little bit easier, but your time is your money. And if I look at my children and my wife and, the valuable time that I've missed with them, and you really do wonder, is these jobs we value not just worse for us in the long run?
I really appreciate that. And you have responsibilities for your staff as well, who I can tell from your conversation that you really care about the people who work for you and work in the store. And what kind of reflections have you had about your faith? I mean, I know you've been so busy, you've probably hardly stopped, but have you been thinking, have you had any reflections on your faith over the past, 4 to 6 weeks?
Oh, yes, absolutely. And I think that's kind of, for us as Christians, that's kind of the beauty of, having that strength in what we believe, because when some of these situations happen and they're horrible and they're awful and we don't ever wish or want them, it usually actually serves as quite a strong benefit for us as Christians, because number one, it allows us to first of all realize, wow, we're not in control. Yikes. And then suddenly have us rely and need to rely and know that we need to be relying on something bigger and stronger. When we get scared, that's when we fall back to God. That's when we realize that something's missing in our lives. And that was absolutely the situation with this for me and maybe my whole family. As I mentioned, we were, in Mexico not too long ago, and I can think there, all I thought about, for a long time was, next vacation, the next trip, buying a new car, getting a nicer house. And it did come with, being a little bit tighter and then having a little more financial freedom. And I started to obsess, and I started to, worldly wealth became so much more important to me than it ever was when there wasn't an option of it. And I actually found myself, constantly praying for help the store to be successful, help for me to make money, and for the completely wrong reasons, wanting to make money to buy these new status symbols, if you will, to buy these worldly riches. And I begged and begged and begged for the store to just be as busy as it is now. And then here's the irony of it all is it's busier than it's ever been, and there's no vacations and there's no going anywhere, and you would in a heartbeat give it all back, because you really are kind of having this this nervousness, this fear about worrying about my parents, my grandparents, my children, those around us. And it was so ironic that the one thing I was praying so fervently for is really not the thing I needed at all. And when I almost received it, got it, realized that's not what I've been looking for. And that really shows that when you're wanting something that's based in the world, it's so easy for it to fall apart. And that was kind of my lesson, is that as much as that seemed like an amazing thing to me to, be able to buy a big new house and a new car and go on vacations and all that, you quickly realize none of that matters if you don't have your health or your family or any of that.
And you can't, and no one can do any of that at the moment anyway.
Exactly. So I wanted my store and my business to be so busy, and now it doesn't matter because you can't do anything. You can't spend extra money. You can't go anywhere. So it was a real wake up to me, thinking, what have I been looking for? What have I been asking for? What have I been praying for? And I do believe personally that that God cares about what we do for a job. He cares about what we work and how that affects our lives. And I've been one to say, I think it's okay to pray to God to say, help me to do well, help me if I'm working on this project, or if I've got this important interview or this meeting, help for me to do well. But as we always know, remembering, that God's will and what he plans in our lives is going to trump what we want. And thinking we want something and telling him what we want, and he seems to always have a way of making us realize that we don't know what's best for ourselves. We don't know what it is we need, and seeing something like this come and seeing that, how close we are, I think, to a completely different world out there. When we look at the famine, the pestilence, all the different signs in the world around us, and I think here I am praying to get another vacation to Mexico or to get a new car, and completely missing the bigger picture of what's going on. So a wake up call, I think, is an understatement for myself.
Yeah. And how does your faith help you on how's it sustained you on a daily basis? Like when you wake up in the morning, like on your way to the store, what kind of things do you pray about, or to get you through the chaos of work at the moment because it's so busy?
Mm-hmm. That's a very good point, because every morning I have a bit of a commute in, and when I'm driving towards the store, I do tend to pray. And you're absolutely right. A month and a half ago, I was going in praying, help for those sales to have been really good last night. Please help for this and this vendor to work out, and praying for really worldly things. And I go in the mornings now, and I'm focused on to me, much more important things. Please keep my family safe. Please keep me safe. Keep my parents safe. Keep some of those elders and from our church. Please keep them safe, and keep my staff safe, and help for them to be okay, and help for their tensions and it's real issues, and to me, more importantly, help for me to be right with God. Help for me to have my children be learning the right way, and my wife to be able to be strengthened and encouraged as she's at home alone, and it's completely changed what it is that you want, because all of that was taken for granted. I mean, we're younger, we were healthier, the kids were blessed that they're very young and in good health, and you really didn't actually think or pray or concern yourself with the fact that something might actually happen to them or your family. And of course, knowing that if something awful, were to ever happen to me or to happen to my wife or my parents, that we have something to get us through, that we have that belief in God, and that we have that hope of knowing that we're not going to just cease to exist ever again. And realizing in order to really be able to count on that hope, we have to be right with God. We have to exercise ourselves. So heading in the morning now is like a wake up every morning again. Like, let's just stay alive. Let's just get through this and be safe and get through this fear and the thoughts of new cars and money and all that fancy stuff has quickly gone the wayside.
Yeah. Do you feel God's presence there when you're at work?
I do sometimes. I wish I did more. I'll be guilty for one that once you get there, you're just so go that I often forget to, we usually sometimes don't have an opportunity to take a lunch, and I don't go a whole day without praying and without thinking. And the end of the day comes, and I think, oh man, if I had maybe taken a moment and prayed about that, I would have handled that a little bit differently. Maybe I would have thought of that in a different way. And but he absolutely is there. You can see it in the way that things go sometimes, where and to me, I very much believe in the interaction with people and with each other is how we can really see that Spirit of God. And I think that's quite often the way that God communicates and teaches us. And for me, and there was one day in particular where after the first few weeks of almost excitement, of fun, of craziness, busyness, and volume, and making money, it started to become overwhelming. I hadn't had any days off, was working very long days, and then we started to have a few customers that were not as nice and a little bit more frustrating, and I started to have some tension with the staff and with each other, some emotions high, and having a really, really frustrating day. And I, one of those days where I walked out and I was, usually I might go up hollering or yelling at someone. Instead, I kind of walked and I took a moment of quiet prayer. And then this old lady just came up to me and, just one of those kind people that just said, what you guys are doing here is so incredible. This means the world to us. I'm so glad to have this little store that I can come and feel safe, and all the measures you've done. And you've really, blessed my life. You are a true blessing from God, is what she said, and walked away. And I thought, wow, here I am, so heated about whatever it was. And again, losing that picture, the bigger picture, losing that vision of what we're here to do. And I think it's very easy to happen. Life is so busy. We lose that picture a lot.
Yeah.
And taking that time to settle back and see it. And when I have that happen to me, I feel like that is God's presence. I think he is there at work. I just need to take the time sometimes to acknowledge him. And put a pause, just even for a moment, just to say a quiet prayer in my mind. And I find, for me, it could completely change a day around.
Yeah, and he will carry you through.
Mm-hmm. You're absolutely right. Yeah, and realizing how weak we are right now I think is one of the most amazing blessings out there. Realizing, we haven't got this figured out. We sometimes become so comfortable and reliant on our amazing doctors and medical workers that we almost feel a little bit invincible sometimes, that, we're fine, we'll be healthy. Worst case, I'll call 911 and go to the hospital and they'll fix me up no matter what it is. And when you see something like this humbling everybody right across the world, it to me is a blessing, because when we put that suffering in our lives, as difficult as it can be at the time, it brings us to a place where we can be molded. Because when we're sure of ourselves, when we're confident, when we are doing what we think we know is best, and going through the actions every day, we often quickly forget that we're not in control, and that God's there, and that we have to allow him to work with us. So I honestly myself need to be brought down to rock bottom every now and then to realize, okay, you're not as special as you think you are. Time to turn to God and let him work with you.
Yeah, totally. And we know that coronavirus will pass. We don't know when it will pass, but we know it will. And when it does, have you had any time to reflect on what you might change, or how you do anything? Would you do anything different?
Honestly, I think, and you're absolutely right, it will pass, whether it be a year or 2 years or however long it may be. But I think it's completely changed the way we are going to operate as a society. Yeah. I really do. My sisters have spoke about this, and I'm sure you've heard of many other people that have, spoke about the idea of a pandemic like this being inevitable, of coming, and how ill prepared we are, and even some of our more basic actions that we do every day that are constantly spreading this virus, bacteria among each other. And I think some of the actions that I've put into place in my store, the social distancing, the guards up in front of the cashiers, the different cleansing and cleaning policies that we have now, I don't know if they'll ever go away, because I think we'll now as a society need to be better prepared for something like this to happen in the future. And with that first 2, 3, 4 days where we did almost nothing to stop the spread, versus now with the rigorous process that we have for every customer that comes in the store, I mean, shows we were so ill prepared. I would never have thought of all the different steps that we take right now. So I think it really has changed it, and I think we'll see. I mean, I even was reading an article yesterday talking about the handshake, and if you I don't know if you've seen anything lately when you see maybe a movie or a show where people handshake, and right now we're all like, ooh, what are you touching? Why are you touching like that? And that's one of those things. I mean, one of the most common things we do whenever you go up and see somebody, a stranger, a person you've never met, you shake their hand, you rub your palms together, and we have a lot of different, even just putting our arms around people and how close we speak and talk. Sometimes I really think that there's going to be some major changes to the way we go forward as a society.
Yeah, and God has God's made us with these 5 amazing senses, and one of those is touch, and that's something really special when we touch, when we shake a hand, when we embrace someone, when we show our love and affection to those we care about. And even when we go to church on a Sunday, my church, everyone's hugging, and that even if we've only, it's been a week, we saw these people a week ago, and we're happy to see them again, and we feel connected, and we're there to encourage and build each other up. And it's very strange to think that we couldn't do that, and we have to be distant from each other.
Yes, and that is probably the biggest challenge of all, the hardest thing to imagine. I mean, I don't know how it's been for you, but for me, sometimes in the last few years with the young children, where meeting, going to church kind of becomes stressful, tiring. You don't even necessarily look forward to it all the time. When the kids were younger and they were misbehaving, and you're spending the whole time just trying to keep them quiet. And then I look at now in the last year and buying the business and thinking half the time through meeting, oh man, is something going on? What's going on well? And again, just taking it for granted. And now I know in our church we're kind of trying to meet with a group of us over Zoom just like this and video conference. And man, what we wouldn't give right now to be able to be there with each other. Yeah. And after there was, days and weeks that I was dreading going or almost trying to find a way out of going, and what you wouldn't give now to have that opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah, we've been, my husband and I have been reflecting on that, is that one of the real things that motivates us to be together is the people. And we're, even on Zoom, when we see each other's faces on a Sunday morning or a Bible class, everyone is so happy just to see each other and to see that we are all still here and we're healthy.
Absolutely.
And this is also just such a time to be thankful and to thank God for all we have. And it's the little things as well as the big things, isn't it? I think that's really struck me at the moment. I'm thankful when it's a sunny day at the moment compared to a rainy day.
Yes.
Which is something that doesn't normally affect me, but
you're absolutely right. Those little blessings now are what we look forward to in a day, and very much taken for granted in the past.
Yeah, I mean, we have to see something hopeful and positive out of all of this, even though it is really hard and there's a lot of suffering. I think you've spoken about your community, not just your church community, but the village, the community that support your store, how they've come together, and the love and warmth there. And I hope that will continue after all this is over.
Absolutely, yeah. That's the big thing is with all of the different things that I've kind of reflected on about myself personally, and the wake up call that a situation like this could be, and the way that we're living our life. The problem with that is, then it can kind of disappear again. It can quickly go away. You could feel that strength and feel that passion and be saying those prayers. And then it's just not so easy that day. And then maybe you go a couple days and then a few weeks and quickly you kind of start to fall back into those old habits and forget about where you were. So I think the real greatest message is that of just perseverance right now, of just continuing to push through and see that light that's coming at the end of this, at the end of it all, and know that there's something much greater than this, and knowing that this world isn't capable of giving us complete happiness. It's not capable of giving us that true, joy, lack of fear, lack of pain. It's always going to be here. And pushing through at these times, and for now, it's some people, it's just being forced to stay home for the next few weeks, the next few months, whatever it may be, and I could see the frustration. I see people start to go back outside and spread back out and try to be getting out and getting away, but it's again that perseverance to push through for our society and our fellow man at this time, and trying to flatten the curve, but also perseverance in our spiritual lives as well, of pushing forward and remembering that both of these things are going to be over soon, but that there is something much greater coming, and just kind of calming our minds and bringing ourselves that inner strength to just keep moving forward, keep pushing on day by day, and knowing this isn't forever, this isn't permanent, this is our struggle until something better comes along, until brighter days come.
Oh, totally. And to really hold on to that. I think the living each day at a time has really hit me a lot more over the last 5 weeks now. I'm kind of on week 5 of lockdown, and I think previously, especially with taking children to the school and then picking them up, and like a week can really whiz by and be really fast. And this is also just been a chance to slow down and realize, right, I can only take one day at a time, because actually what happens tomorrow I have no control over, and I need to trust in God just in today.
Mm-hmm. And how have you found your children? And as we mentioned, we both have children around the same age. I have a 4-year-old and a 7-year-old. And how have you felt that they understand what's happening, what's going on?
I think they don't really understand that much. I mean, I've talked a little bit about how people are ill and we have to stay home and we need to make sure everyone is safe. And we need to look after each other. We need to look out for people, especially in our neighbourhood at the moment, who are vulnerable. And we've kind of been dropping off food parcels and little notes and calling people who are in isolation, just even in our neighbourhood. And they're very aware of that, but at the same time, they're so protected because they're young and they're still at a very playful age. And I found there's actually just been so much beauty in how imaginative they've been, and they've just played and they've got on. They're actually, at times they fight, all siblings fight.
Yes, of course.
But other times they've just been really wonderful and they've played really nicely together, and that's really heartwarming. And they've been giving me hugs and telling me that they love me, and of course they pick up. I think they do pick up on our mood, on our emotions as well. Like if we're fearful, they pick up on that. If we're happy, they pick up on that too. And so there are times where they've been a little bit upset, but they've got into it, as kind of routine, and they've been very accepting. And I think. There's something really, we know that verse about how Jesus says, let the little children come to me. And it's that childlike acceptance that we really need to follow God and to love him. And for me, that's really heartwarming to see.
Absolutely.
What about your children?
Yeah, I've had the same kind of thing. I think the biggest thing I noticed, difference between my children and my community, my work family and all that is, like you said, that willingness to obey, that to not question, to not argue. I mean, I just explained to them, about washing their hands regularly, about, not touching daddy when he first comes home until he gets time to, take his clothes off and shower, and, but not going outside and not going over to the neighbors and not having play dates. And I've been surprised at how little they question it. This is a completely new reality. And, my son was, quite ecstatic when there was no school first announced, and he was excited about that for a while. And he did. I think he did say the one day we were listening to the news, and it had mentioned about probably lasted to the end of summer. And I think at that one point was the only time he ever outburst. He said, "We cannot stay in this house the whole summer. You can't do that." And I think that was the one time where he really said he had about enough of it. But for the most part, yeah, both of them just seem to just understand that for whatever reason, whether they really can wrap their heads around, what social distancing or spreading a disease is about, I highly doubt. But they understand that this is what's being required, and they're just going to do it. And if they see someone out walking the dog, they're, hey, you're going to get the virus. And they're trying to tell other people because in their minds, you don't leave the house, and that's just the end of it. And that was what was making me think as well about the exact verse that you just mentioned about, having that faith as children, as looking at any situation and how can I help and how can I make it better, and not questioning it, not fighting it, and not trying to solve it. I think that's so much what I've had just so many people come up and approach me. Well, what we need to do is this and that, and we need to do, and that's kind of what, as adults, we do sometimes. We try to fix everything. We try to come up with a solution ourselves. Versus just realizing it's out of our hands, and to just sort of, sit down and be quiet and do what we're told for a while and kind of follow in the process. And yeah, you're absolutely right. It takes a bit of a childlike innocence to sometimes just set back and let God take the reins, or even if it be the public health workers or the authorities that be to really kind of put your faith in that what we're doing is the right thing, and trusting it and being willing to follow and go along with it, I think is more difficult than we think.
Yeah, and I hope that my children will look back on this time and just once they do have freedom to I hope enjoy their summer as well. Just appreciate everything the more. Appreciate being able to go to the beach. Appreciate going to the park. Appreciate going to Sunday school, in fact, because they miss their friends. And going to school, and all these things we just take for granted every day. And they just point out the little things as well at the moment, like the blossom is coming out and spring flowers around us, and they're really noticing that. And I think that's really beautiful too, that they're seeing God's creation, and and just using their imagination, which I think is very God-given too. And for me that's really heartwarming. And I hope that it's a different type of resilience for sure that grows in children, but I hope that resilience is going to be there for them in the future and help grow their faith as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. It's and it really is, that's the never-ending struggle of just trying to raise children up. Is very easy to make mistakes and to realize that we're not geniuses, we're not experts on parenting. We're learning as we go, and hoping that God is there and is working with them, and then having that faith and that trust that He is. That these situations that come up where they take me out of that comfort zone, they really are something to pray for.
Yeah.
I mean, and it sounds a little funny to pray for suffering, but I really strongly believe that suffering is God's gift to us. It is the only way of really humbling us, of bringing us down, of teaching to us, of making us, have an opportunity at that gift. Because if everything goes well and everything is going swimming in life, no matter how much we try to do or read our Bible or go to different church activities, when life goes well, you do find yourself, start to fall away in one way or another. Whether even if you go through the motions, but everything's going well, I find you don't maybe have that passion, that need, that desire for prayer. You almost just go through the motions because that's what you do. But when something's going wrong, when something's scary, when something is not in your control and you're scared, it's just a different kind of prayer, isn't it? A different kind of passion, a connection almost, that you realize when you're speaking to your Heavenly Father and pleading and asking and begging, please help me, and knowing you can't do it on your own and how much you need Him.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I mean, I think suffering really helps us grow closer to God, and helps us trust in Him more and to trust in His Son. Is there anything else you want to add before we finish our chat?
Oh no, I think I've done lots and lots of talking. Doesn't take much to get me going.
It's been a real pleasure to talk to you and to hear about your experiences at the grocery store you manage, and to share your experiences of faith. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak to me.
Thank you so much for having me on, and appreciate getting to hear your experiences, and getting some time to talk has certainly been a highlight of my day.